This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show, very different, obviously, to the weekday show. It's a lot more competitive. We're nominating the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, a sleeper story, which requires us to do a bit of snooping around and pick out a story that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and then our favourite story. And every week I go into this going, like half of the time it's like this is a big competition and I'm here to win. And the other time it's like, you know what, let's just have fun.
I reckon that's like when you lose, you go, oh, that was just fun. We're just having fun, that one.
Yeah, I usually decide at the end of the first story whether it's a competitive one or whether it's a friendly, I suppose you'd call it. We need an adjudicator every week, and we are fortunate to be joined this week by our regular adjudicator, our regular judge, Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam. Have you recovered from your absence, your sickness that took you out last week?
Good morning, Michael. And yes, I've sufficiently recovered, I think.
All right, let's jump straight in. Biggest story of the week. Sean, would you like to go first?
Well, it has to be the economy. I know there are listeners out there rolling their eyes going, oh, here we go again.
No, well, okay, remember 3 weeks ago, we had what I like to now call the Joseph intervention, which was where a listener by the name of Joseph said, look, every week it's the economy, pick something else. And I thought we had an accord here that we would pick different stories, and you've just gone straight in for the economy. Oh, ouch.
Oh, well, no, I do remember that certainly Joseph, it was a great idea. I didn't think that we'd agreed on that.
Well, I had.
Right. Well, if you would like to do that, so next week, for example, we're going to have inflation. So that's going to be the biggest no matter what. And then the following week, we're going to have interest rates. So they're obviously going to be the biggest stories for the next 2 weeks. So I'm with Joseph. Can't use the economy from tomorrow.
From tomorrow. That's I love how generous you are. You're generous of spirit. So please, go on, Sean. Let's hear your biggest story.
Righto. Look, the labour market is hot with unemployment last month coming in at 3.5%, thanks to a surprise 33,000 jump in jobs. The 49-year low in the unemployment rate is 3.4%. We hit that earlier this year, so 3.5%. Well, it's more or less there. Thing is, the economy is supposed to be slowing. Retailers have told us that for the past 3 or 4 weeks. The banks have said bad loans or loans in arrears are ticking up. The Reserve Bank and Treasurer Jim Chalmers said it, but still people have jobs. It's a double-edged sword. When people have jobs, they spend money, they keep the economy ticking over. That's great. But it also keeps pressure on prices and interest rates. It's important to remember that the Bureau of Statistics labour force stats are backwards looking. The employment market is about the last thing to turn, but you would have thought it would have turned a little bit by now. One little known fact worth keeping in mind. The average monthly jump in jobs over the past 3 months is 35,000. Given the strong population growth that we keep talking about, to keep the unemployment rate where it is, you need monthly growth of about 50,000. There's 15,000 short. Maybe this week was the last hurrah for unemployment, but I'm not really sure about that. I'm just throwing it in. We know the Reserve Bank's incoming governor, Michelle Bullock, thinks 4.5%. Oh, stop sighing, Michael. Stop sighing.
No, I'm sorry. I forget that you can hear me sighing. I'm rolling my eyes as well. But
see the eye rolls, and I'm used to that. But the actual sigh, so that the listener can hear that too, it's a bit off-putting.
I'm sorry. I'll eye roll silently at you.
Thank you. We know Michelle Bullock, the incoming Reserve Bank governor, thinks 4.5% is the unemployment rate needed to take pressure off prices. Still a long way to go to reach that. We know the Reserve Bank is looking at data very closely. They told us that in the minutes from the last board meeting. They were released this week. Next week's June quarter inflation data is critical. The Reserve Bank will want to see that in the low sixes. If it's not in the low sixes, I reckon a rate rise is almost a sure thing. Professional investors at the moment reckon there's about a 50% chance of rate hike Tuesday week. Big story. Story of the week. You agree with me, Michael. Go on.
I don't really know where to go with this. I'm going to go with something a little bit different. You know what? I'm just going to say...
Well, Michael, maybe we'll just have because I didn't know the rules and I'm being generous of spirit and we will just forfeit the first category for today.
You can forfeit. Yes, I'm glad. I'm happy for you to do that.
Off the table. Go on.
Oh, okay, that was quick. Very brief offer there. Look, I'm going to take a different approach for the biggest story of the week, and I'm not going to do what you just did, Sean, and group a whole bunch of illegal stories together.
Illegal?
I'm going to steer clear of economics because that was what we had agreed previously based on the Joseph intervention. I'm going to steer clear of international politics as well. I normally do that because there was just one story that everybody was talking about this week where business, politics and sport collide, and that is Victoria pulling out of the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Originally, the Games were supposed to be held across 5 regional areas in the state, providing a massive economic boost in the post-COVID years. Not anymore. We have Premier Daniel Andrews citing a massive budget blowout, saying the cost had gone from about kind of $2.5 billion to somewhere around $6 or $7 billion. Who knows? There's so many figures being tossed around, but he said he couldn't justify that for a 12-day sporting event, that the money's better spent on schools and hospitals. It is a good line, but he has copped an absolute hammering over it, with plenty of people saying the government was warned long ago that the cost of holding it outside Melbourne would blow out significantly. Can you imagine just how devastating it would have been to those regional areas this week across the state to find out this news, and to the businesses operating there? Because these are the kind of events that businesses make long-term plans around. It's that kind of certainty thing that we talk about all the time, about how that is so important for business. Anyway, the fallout has been huge. The fallout has been global. It risks Melbourne's reputation as the sporting capital of Australia. The very future of the Commonwealth Games hangs in the balance right now. Heaps of countries very quick to rule themselves out as alternative hosts, all while Australia should be shining on the global sporting stage as the hosts with New Zealand of the Women's Football World Cup. 1.5 million people expected to attend games. Global TV audience of $2 billion. Interesting little sidebar to this. FIFA criticised for failing to capitalise commercially on the event, generating just over $300 million in sponsorship revenue.
I'm interrupting here. Right at the beginning, you said you're not going to group a bunch of stories together. We're suddenly on the Matildas. How did we get there?
Welcome back to the stage, Sean Nitpicker Aylmer. It's an irrelevant detail, Sean.
Go on.
It feels like you're getting distracted here. $300 million in sponsorship revenue. That is compared to $6.3 billion in total revenue for last year's Men's World Cup. But anyway, this should be a huge week for international sport in Australia, and it certainly is. But a little bit of that gloss has been taken off because of the Commonwealth Games decision, and that is what everybody has been talking about this week. It is the biggest story of the week. Adam, go. Agree.
Okay, so the criteria: topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, and melodrama. So I have to tell you both something. I'm experimenting with a new matrix for judging.
Well, that's a bit of a throw to us too, isn't it? Given that we're the competitors. Who'd want to have an even playing field here, right?
So, well, I think it's consistent. So what I've done is I've applied 5 points for each of those criteria to work out your score. So to make up a maximum of 25.
Can we use that nitpicker word, Michael?
Yes. Feel free to apply it, Sean.
I prefer exacting, but anyway.
You are the only person I know that could get excited by the line, "I'm experimenting with a new matrix." And you say it with glee in your voice, Adam. And I was like, okay, all right.
I think it's an improvement, an evolution.
It is consistent with what we know about you. Just as Sean being a nitpicker is consistent with what we know about him. But please go on. I don't want to make everyone an enemy.
Okay, not yet, but progressively. So, biggest story of the week. Michael, I think yours might fall into a different category, specifically on economic impact. I just don't see the Commonwealth Games as in 2026 as having the biggest impact on our economy this week. So, very good on topicality and timeliness. Melodrama, excellent. Like the way the fallout has been huge. The fallout has been global. Just magnificent finish. But ultimately, Sean, you win. The labour market is a huge story. 3.5% unemployment remains to be a huge story. And like you said, where that leads us with inflation and interest rates is really interesting and the biggest story of the week for me.
Excellent decision. I don't mind this new judging style.
The new matrix.
For now.
Yeah.
Can I give you a story for the most remarkable then?
Please.
I reckon this is going to be right up your alley, Adam. And Sean, I reckon actually it could be up your alley as well because...
hello.
Well, this is...
Now I'm enjoying it.
This is a remarkable story. I find it remarkable that considering superannuation assets in Australia total around $3.5 trillion, and we got a whole lot of baby boomers retiring, that the super funds aren't really ready for people to actually retire. Don't you just find that just quite extraordinary? Because this week we had a review released by ASIC and APRA, and that review found that superannuation funds are showing, quote, a lack of progress and insufficient urgency in preparing for the impending retirement of baby boomers. This is an enormous concern because super funds have been very much focused on the accumulation phase when people are putting money in, than they are on the decumulation phase when they're taking money out in retirement. And the most alarming thing about this is that the review says while most super funds are falling short on the support they offer, they also have no concrete plans on how to improve these failings. And most have done no in-depth analysis on their members' income needs in retirement. I find this just remarkable, almost like it comes as a surprise that people will want to retire and use the money that they've been putting away, and that they're going to need support and they're going to need a framework and they're going to need a strategy. We talk about kind of politicians, by the way, and kind of public servants, etc., who are able to cut through with a good line. Well, I'm going to nominate ASIC Commissioner Danielle Press, who this week said, "We've got a silver tsunami coming. It's going to break on our shores and we need to make sure we're prepared for that." And she also said, quote, "Most funds have done little more than create a pretty document about their retiree strategies." This is a big wake-up call for a massive, massive industry, a remarkable story.
Wow. Don't hold back.
Oh.
Mickey T, off you go.
And you know, a little bit of strategy in this, because I know that this is an area of particular interest to you, Sean, and that you've done a lot of work in this space. And so my strategy was get in and grab this topic before you got a chance to do it. So,
actually, I know Danielle Press. I used to work with her at the Reserve Bank many years ago.
Oh, really?
Lovely person. Does an amazing amount for Danielle, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, but like sheltering homeless animals, dogs and things like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's pretty remarkable.
How good's that line? A silver tsunami coming. It's going to break on our shores. Yeah. I was just like, well done. I mean, that is how you get attention to and this is a big enough story on its own, but you really just need a couple of cracking lines like that to help cut through. And well done, Danielle Press.
That is truly the second most remarkable story of the week. I agree. The most remarkable, though, you're talking about a few 100,000 baby boomers just... whatever. Me, I'm talking about 1 billion people. Well, maybe not 1 billion, but I'm talking about 55 million people here globally.
That's a long way off 1 billion, just for the record.
Yeah, well, I'll be a bit soon if you're just a few more. And mine's actually about me as well. Well, oldies, actually, which is myself in mine. Dementia experts reckon they are on track to, if not curing the insidious illness, making inroads into slowing the trajectory of this horror disease. This week, Eli Lilly released trial results that show its new drug significantly slows memory loss and cognitive decline. Last November, US biotech Biogen and Japan's Eisai released similar results from phase 3 trials. That drug now has full marketing approval from the US Food and Drug Administration. Dementia results from a variety of diseases and injuries that affect the brain. Currently, more than 55 million people have dementia worldwide. 60% of those live in low and middle income countries. Every year, there are nearly 10 million new cases. It affects the elderly most. You're also at risk if you're overweight, drink too much, a bunch of things, high blood pressure, diabetes, smoke, etc. Richard Oakley, who's the Associate Director of Research at UK charity The Alzheimer's Society, put it really well this week. Talk about a cracking line, a bit like Danielle Press in superannuation. In terms of dementia, this is what really hit home to me, and I suddenly thought, oh, wow, finally, something's being done. He said, the past 8 months have been a real turning point as 2 drugs are shown to slow down the progression of the disease after decades of work with no positive findings. Remarkable story this week. Adam.
Wow, both are excellent. So both topical, timely, big economic impact, high subjective bias on my account, and good melodrama. Michael, that silver tsunami line is an absolute ripper. So I've actually given you both maximum points.
Ooh.
And it's interesting that they're both in a very similar area. They're both to do with the maturity and how we're living longer, right? So I think those are excellent, remarkable stories, both of them, and I can't split them apart. So it's a tie.
Ooh.
This is good. I really thought I'd win this category.
It was very good.
Oh, I mean, clearly it got maximum marks.
It did, but so did Sean's.
Yeah, I know.
If anything, the dementia one, geez, doesn't that just pull at your heartstrings?
It absolutely does. I'm just, you know what, I think I'm still reeling from the first round because it felt like we were arguing on two completely different categories there because of the whole, of Sean's whole stuff up with that thing. So anyway, look, I'm not going to live in the past.
I'm not going to hang on to that. You won't hang on to that, will you?
No. I'm going to dangle off the little asterisk that's hanging next to your name for quite some time. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to get myself together and we will do the sleeper story in a moment. All right, we are looking for a sleeper story. I don't know what the score is because Adam's new scoring matrix has confused me. So I'm assuming it's 1.5 to half or something like that.
That is correct, Michael. Well done.
Okay, all right, That's good. That's not good. Not good because it's not for me.
You're still in range.
Sleeper story. So this is one that's flying under the radar a little bit, maybe going to be a big story further down the track. Sean, why don't you go first on this one?
Sure.
Do you have a story?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to remember it. Oh, yes. This is a good story. This one comes from federal politics. I reckon this week we saw that the honeymoon is over for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the Labor Party. The coalition is kind of making ground. In some areas, they're making ground, but some of the minor parties are doing pretty well too, but we're just not hearing much about it. Last weekend, the Fadden by-election on the Gold Coast proved a solid victory for the Liberal National Party. It demonstrates Labor's struggles in the Sunshine State. While Labor didn't really expect to win because Stuart Robert had held that seat with a 10% margin, the 2.5% two-party preferred swing against the government means the Conservatives won back some of those voters that they lost at the last election. Labor holds just 5 of the 30 federal Queensland seats, a real problem for the government. Also this week, the latest news poll in The Australian shows that Labor is losing support. Now, the coalition isn't exactly picking up. That honour goes to the minor parties. But the trend for the government isn't good. Anthony Albanese's approval rating hit a low point in June, with the government primarily engaged in explanations of the voice to Parliament that politically is not helping them. It's been on a downward trajectory since the start of the year. The poll says that the cost of living crisis is hurting Labor. It's not panic stations, but support for the government ain't what it used to be. And we're just, this last week particularly, seeing that seep through. Michael.
Sleeper story for me. It's quite a serious story, actually, and it's a sleeper because you don't expect to hear allegations of modern slavery in Australia. I'll go through the details of the story very quickly, and then we'll discuss kind of why it's so important. Labour hire company Lynx Employment under investigation following claims that workers were being mistreated. The company basically sources workers from the Pacific Islands, placing them into jobs, fruit picking and farm work across the country, in this case in Tasmania and Queensland. Some of these workers claim their visas had been seized and pay slips weren't being provided and staff were being bullied and threatened. And the federal government decided to revoke Lynx Employment's business licence. What's particularly damning here, though, are the comments from the Australian Workers Union. So you had AWU National Secretary Paul Farrow saying, if you go to the Australian Federal Police website and look at the checklist for modern slavery, you will find these workers tick a lot of the boxes. He went on to say that when local farmers have approached Lynx for work with our members, Lynx have blocked them. He said there were threats by the company to send workers home when they complained, and there was excessive money being taken out for substandard accommodation. Hundreds of workers now being placed into new roles, including many in legal limbo. They refer to it because they don't have an employer basically to sponsor their visa. Walk Free, which is the anti-slavery foundation set up by the Minderoo Foundation, talks about the vulnerability of Pacific migrant workers specifically. Fortunately, the Global Slavery Index shows that Australia has the second highest ranking in the world in terms of government response to modern slavery. But alarmingly, and this is the thing that and I know we've talked about this before, but it's a statistic I think that bears repeating just because it is quite staggering, that there are an estimated 41,000 people living in these conditions of modern slavery in Australia. It is a sleeper story because we do not think that much about it. And you assume that Australia, it shouldn't be happening here, but it is. And when you find out the details of it, as we did this week, it is really pretty confronting. There you go. Serious story, not too much kind of embellishment because I think the details are fairly harrowing as they are. Adam.
Both of you very good on topicality, very good on timeliness. Economic impact, I had you dead even, right? On subjective bias, Michael, you just got me with the modern slavery. And on melodrama, I thought you were both even.
Jeez, I must have been really boring because if on melodrama we're on even.
I didn't want to say anything, but you were a bit dull, Sean. Yeah.
So on this one, Michael, by 1 point, you've got it. And we are now dead even.
Oh, here we go. Oh, the tension. Can you feel it? It feels tense in here.
It does.
All right. Sean, shall I go first on my... No, you go.
Sure.
No, I'll go first.
Righto.
Okay. Favorite story. There's a lot of options this week. There's been some really good stories around. And unfortunately for us all, I've had to do a little bit of an Aylmer and group a couple of stories under one category. And I've given
Okay, so at the beginning of the show, you're saying nitpicker because now you're actually abusing me for it. God almighty.
Consistency's never been an issue for Michael.
You have to put up with a lot, don't you, Sean?
I do.
Anyway, I've given these stories the catchy title, US entertainment giants and interesting things that they did. I maybe should have put a little bit more thought and work into that.
Punchy.
It's like Jeopardy or something, isn't it?
That's right. I will start with Netflix. Obviously, they have been cracking down on password sharing, and anyone who's tried to log in on their brother-in-law's account would have found this out in recent weeks, and then been forced to get their own account. Fair enough. But they've now seen one of their biggest jumps in subscribers since the beginning of the pandemic, 5.9 million subscribers in 3 months. But competition in the whole industry actually is tough. It leads me into the second story. Poor Disney. Right? After a few years, they bought a lot of assets. They've acquired Marvel and Pixar and Lucasfilm, which produces some of the greatest films ever. Adam, don't you agree? Star Wars?
Well, they bought the company that made them, so yes.
Oh, I like the attitude from the judge on you there, Mike.
He's getting a bit sassy, isn't he?
Yeah, a bit sassy. I like it.
Hang on, what are you criticising then the new Star Wars films that have been produced since Disney acquired Lucasfilm?
No.
No, okay. I'm sensing just a little bit of. I think one of Sean's favourite words this week was tetchy, and I'm sensing a little bit of tetchiness right now.
It's probably because this story's going on and on.
It's
only
because of your intervention. You're just constant interruptions. Anyway, moving on.
Interruptions.
Oh, my God. If that is not nitpicking, I don't know what is. About a third of the company is now up for sale. TV networks like ABC and FX and Disney's looking for a strategic partner for ESPN, looking to sell its TV and streaming business in India. Before the pandemic, Disney's media networks generated about 35% of revenue, half of profit. Those figures have tumbled. Streaming services Disney Plus and Hulu are losing money. All of this now leads into the third story that I'm going to link very quickly into this Aylmer omnibus that I'm doing here. Actors going on strike that really kind of played out this week alongside the writers. This is potentially devastating for the broader film and TV industry because productions just have to stop. And it was described this week as the biggest potential threat to the entertainment industry in more than 60 years. It puts a lot of pressure on a lot of the studios and a lot of the kind of the bodies that group together the studios to resolve some of the big issues here, mainly the residual payments because of streaming. The model is based on an older way of operating before Netflix and Hulu and all the rest of them, which has seen kind of writers and some actors not being paid really anything at all for shows that get watched over and over again on these streaming platforms. The other big issue being AI and the use of AI to replicate or replace actors entirely. Couple of bizarre things. You suddenly see Fran Drescher, aka the nanny, leading the actors on a strike, and it's just like, okay, this is quite extraordinary and doing a pretty spectacular job of it. The other great story that came out of it was, did you see what happened outside the Universal strike, where the picket line was? And overnight, Universal came in. Some people from the lot came in and trimmed all of the trees on the street, took off all of the branches, all of the leaves, and they said
the shade.
They said we had to do it ahead of the high wind season. It just also happened that was where during a heat wave in the US, that was where a lot of the striking actors and writers had been meeting. And so it's a little bit of scandal, a little bit of maybe some kind of dirty kind of tactics. I'm not going to speculate, but I just think it's an interesting little note. It feels like this story is a little bit long, but overall, you can group it all under US entertainment giants and interesting things that they did, and I can just see my hopes of a victory fading into the distance. You know what? It feels a little self-indulgent, but I don't care.
We're kind of along the same lines, because you had the story about superannuation and I had dementia. You had the fantastic stories about US entertainment giants and interesting things that they did. And mine's about Barbenheimer. Same sort of thing. I mean, what else?
Maybe I should have just wrapped that into my story.
You should have probably. I'm talking about the movie Barbie, starring Australia's Margot Robbie, and Oppenheimer, starring Cillian Murphy, with the hard C, Cillian. Now, both opened on Thursday. Both are supposed to save cinemas from something or other, whatever it is. There is so much hoo-ha about these movies. AMC Entertainment, which is the world's largest movie chain, says more than 20,000 of its loyalty members booked in to watch Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day. UK cinema chain View said about 20% of the customers were watching both movies within a 24-hour period. Economically, these are very, very important movies for the industry. The big hits this year just haven't worked. Things like The Flash, which traditionally superheroes work for cinemas. The Flash hasn't gone off. Fast Cars tend to work. And Fast X, that movie didn't make what it was supposed to make. Animation works. Elemental was never as big this year as it was previously. So these two movies really matter. Barbie's takings through to tomorrow night in the US are expected to be about $160 million US. That means in the first 4 days, it will be the number one box office movie of the year. At the moment, Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible, which has been out for a couple of weeks, has that. It's at about $126 million US. This is expected taking through to tomorrow night, Sunday night US time. Oppenheimer will take about $65 million US in the first 4 days of its showing. Barbie in particular is also a very, very important film because apart from Dopey Ken, most of the actors are female. Now, big grossing films don't tend to have lead female actors, and most of the ensemble are female. So about a third of the top 100 grossing films last year featured female protagonists, but mostly they were films of genres that typically cater for men. Barbie will be the top grossing film of 2023. It's got a female dominant cast. That's just fantastic. That says a lot, Michael, a lot. And I'm pleased that you're not sighing at this. Finally, how can you not love Barbie? It's pink. Everything is pink. It's wonderful. There you go. My favourite story, Adam.
Oh, that was actually quite good. I mean, it could have been a heck of a lot shorter, and but it was good. I'd say what, out of 20, 12? Are we in agreement here, Adam?
Well, it's out of 25, so no.
12 out of 25. That still works.
Both stories very much in the similar theme again. So as you said, Sean, in the field of entertainment, two massive films and the potential to save the cinema industry. And then on the other side, you've got one of the consequences of the decline of the cinema industry in the streaming. So Netflix changing its business model, Disney Plus not yet making money, losing money, actors and writers on strikes because of themes very much related to this industrial change. So it's even on favourite story of the week. So that means you're dead even on the story count too.
Holy moly, 2-all.
2-all.
Okay, to the
Holy
points.
moly, Batman.
To the points.
Michael, 89 points.
Oh, dear.
Sean, 92 points.
Oh.
I think my matrix is working very well, don't you?
You really do know how to kind of, I don't know.
Put a wet blanket on things?
Yeah.
Oh, Adam Wet Blanket Lang.
Yeah, but the credibility of the scoring is sound.
All right. You know what? That's a good result. In the end, the big winner here is business news.
Oh, the listener. The listener's a big winner. The listener.
No, I don't think listeners have won out of
that's
this
true.
week. It's been
Barry, if you're still listening to this point, this is the senior business leader I interviewed during the week. I won't actually say who he is. If you're still listening, thank you for putting up with this.
Thank you for sticking with us. All right. Wet Blanket, thank you very much.
I shouldn't answer that, but thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Nitpicker.
Goodbye, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, here without a nickname, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.
Nickname could be Loser, Michael.
Savage.